In the heart of the English countryside, nestled within a dense, mist-shrouded forest, stood Black Hollow Manor. The house was a crumbling relic of the Victorian era, its jagged spires piercing the sky like broken teeth. Locals whispered its name with a mixture of dread and fascination, for it was known as the most haunted house in the UK. No one had lived there for over a century, yet its presence loomed large over the village of Hollow's End. The stories surrounding it were countless. Disembodied screams, shadowy figures in the windows, and the faint sound of a child's laughter echoing through the woods at night. It was said that the house was cursed by the blood of the Hollow family, who had once lived there. In 1892, the entire family, father, mother, and 3 children, had vanished without a trace. The only clue was a diary found in the study, its pages filled with frantic scribbles about the shadows that watch and the voice that calls from below. The diary ended abruptly with the words, "It's in the walls." In the summer of 2025, a team of paranormal investigators decided to spend a night in Black Hollow Manor. The group, led by seasoned investigator Marcus Hale, included his wife Claire, a medium named Evelyn, and a skeptical journalist named Tom. They arrived at dusk, the house casting an ominous shadow over the overgrown garden. The air was unnaturally still, and the only sound was the creak of the rusted iron gate as it swung open. Evelyn, the medium, felt it immediately, a suffocating weight pressing down on her chest. "There's something here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's angry. It doesn't want us here." The team set up their equipment in the grand foyer, the once opulent chandelier now hanging crookedly, its crystals dull with age. Cameras, audio recorders, and EMF detectors were placed strategically throughout the house. As night fell, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with an unshakable sense of being watched. At midnight, the team gathered in the dining room, where the Hollow family had last been seen. Evelyn began a seance, her hands resting on the ancient oak table. The room grew colder, and the faint sound of scratching echoed from the walls. Marcus adjusted the thermal camera, his breath visible in the freezing air. Suddenly, the table jerked violently, slamming into Claire's chest and knocking her to the floor. Tom, the journalist, laughed nervously, trying to dismiss it as a prank, but his face paled when the scratching grew louder, more frantic. Evelyn's eyes rolled back, and she began to speak in a guttural voice that wasn't her own. "Leave this place. You do not belong here." The lights flickered, and the EMF detectors spiked. Marcus grabbed his flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. In the corner of the room, a shadow moved. A tall, hunched figure with glowing red eyes. It lunged toward them, and the team scattered, their screams echoing through the house. Claire, desperate to escape, ran upstairs, only to find herself trapped in the master bedroom. The door slammed shut behind her, and the walls began to bleed. Thick, black ooze seeped from the cracks, pooling on the floor. She screamed for help, but her voice was swallowed by the house. Downstairs, Tom and Marcus searched for Evelyn, who had vanished during the chaos. They found her in the basement, standing in front of a large, rusted door. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and she was muttering incoherently. The door, which had been sealed shut for decades, was now slightly ajar, a cold, foul-smelling breeze emanating from within. Before Marcus could stop him, Tom pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. Against his better judgment, Marcus followed him down, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, they found a small, circular room covered in strange symbols. In the center was a well, its depths seemingly endless. As Marcus peered into the well, a deafening scream erupted from above. It was Claire. He turned to run back, but the door slammed shut, trapping him and Tom in the room. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and the well's water, black and viscous, began to rise. From the depths emerged a skeletal hand, followed by a grotesque, decaying figure with hollow eyes and a gaping maw. Tom tried to climb the stairs, but the figure moved with unnatural speed, dragging him into the well. Marcus fought to escape, but the walls seemed to close in around him. The last thing he saw before the darkness consumed him was the figure's face, twisted into a grotesque smile. The next morning, the villagers found the house eerily silent. The team's equipment was scattered and broken, their van still parked outside. Inside, the dining room table was overturned, and the walls were covered in deep, jagged scratches. The basement door was sealed shut once more, its surface scorched as if by fire. No trace of the investigators was ever found. The diary of the Hollow family, now displayed in the local museum, gained a new entry. A single line, written in shaky handwriting. To this day, Black Hollow Manor stands as a grim reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows. Those who dare to approach swear they hear whispers from within, and on quiet nights the sound of a child's laughter still echoes through the woods. But no one has ever entered the house again. Some doors, once opened, should never be closed. The disappearance of Marcus, Claire, Evelyn, and Tom sent shockwaves through the village of Hollow's End. The authorities conducted a thorough search of Black Hollow Manor, but they found nothing, no bodies, no clues, and no explanation for what had happened. The case was eventually closed, labeled as an unsolved mystery. But the villagers knew better. They knew the house had claimed another set of victims, just as it had claimed the Hollow family over a century ago. For a while, the manor was left untouched. The villagers avoided the forest path that led to its gates, and children dared each other to run past it, though none ever did. The house seemed to grow darker, its presence more oppressive, as if it were feeding on the fear and despair it had caused. Months later, a young historian named Sarah Bennett arrived in Hollow's End. She had heard the stories of Black Hollow Manor and was determined to uncover its secrets. Sarah was different from the previous investigators. She wasn't there to prove or disprove the existence of ghosts. She was there to understand the history of the house and the family who had lived there. Armed with old records, photographs, and a stubborn determination, she rented a small cottage on the edge of the village. The villagers warned her to stay away from the manor, but Sarah was undeterred. She spent her days poring over documents in the local library and interviewing elderly residents who still remembered the tales passed down from their grandparents. Slowly, she began to piece together the history of the Hollow family. One evening, Sarah discovered a faded photograph of the Hollow family in the library's archives. The image showed a stern-looking man, his wife, and their 3 children standing in front of the manor. But what caught Sarah's attention was the faint outline of a figure in the upstairs window, a shadowy silhouette with glowing eyes. On the back of the photograph, someone had scribbled, "The Watcher is always there." Intrigued, Sarah dug deeper. She found a series of letters written by Eleanor Hollow, the wife, to her sister. The letters spoke of strange occurrences in the house, footsteps in empty hallways, whispers in the night, and a growing sense of dread. In the final letter, dated just days before the family's disappearance, Eleanor wrote, "I fear we are not alone. Something is here with us, something ancient and malevolent. It speaks to me in my dreams, and I can no longer tell what is real." Sarah's research led her to an old journal belonging to the village's former vicar. The journal described a ritual performed by the Hollow family in the late 1800s, a desperate attempt to summon a powerful entity in exchange for wealth and prosperity. The ritual had gone horribly wrong, and the entity had never left. The vicar had tried to exorcise the house, but he too had vanished, leaving behind only his journal and a cryptic warning. "The watcher cannot be banished. It is bound to the house, and it hungers." Armed with this new information, Sarah decided to visit Black Hollow Manor. She knew it was dangerous, but she felt compelled to uncover the truth. As she approached the house, the air grew colder, and the forest seemed to close in around her. The manor loomed ahead, its windows like empty eye sockets staring into her soul. Sarah entered through the front door, which creaked open as if expecting her. The interior was exactly as the previous investigators had described: crumbling walls, broken furniture, and an oppressive silence. She made her way to the dining room, where the séance had taken place, and set up her equipment. This time, she brought a digital recorder, a camera, and a crucifix she had borrowed from the local church. As night fell, the house came alive. The scratching in the walls returned, and the temperature dropped sharply. Sarah's breath formed clouds in the air as she whispered, "If anyone is here, show yourself." The response was immediate. The recorder picked up a low, guttural growl, and the camera captured a shadowy figure moving across the room. Sarah's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Who are you?" she asked. The voice that answered was not human. It was a deep, resonant growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I am the Watcher. I am the Hunger. You do not belong here." Sarah's hands trembled as she held the crucifix. "What do you want?" The figure stepped into the light, its form shifting and twisting like smoke. Its eyes glowed red, and its mouth stretched into a grotesque smile. "I want to be free. I want to feed." Sarah tried to leave, but the doors and windows were sealed shut. The walls began to bleed, just as they had for Claire, and the air filled with the sound of laughter, children's laughter. She ran upstairs hoping to find a way out, but the house seemed to shift around her, the corridors stretching endlessly. In the master bedroom, she found Evelyn's journal lying on the bed. The pages were filled with the same frantic scribbles as the Hollow family's diary. The last entry read, "It's in the walls. It's in my mind. I can't escape." Sarah's vision blurred, and she felt a presence pressing against her thoughts. The Watcher was inside her head, whispering terrible things, memories of her darkest fears, her deepest regrets. She screamed, clutching her head, but the voice only grew louder. "You cannot run. You cannot hide. I am part of you now." Desperate, Sarah made her way to the basement. The door was open, just as it had been for Marcus and Tom. She descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, she found the circular room with the well. The symbols on the walls glowed faintly, and the water in the well was still and black. Sarah knew what she had to do. She took the crucifix and held it over the well, reciting a prayer she had read in the vicar's journal. The water began to churn, and the Watcher's voice roared in her mind. "You cannot destroy me. I am eternal." But Sarah didn't stop. She poured salt into the well, the ancient symbol of purification, and dropped the crucifix into the water. The room shook violently, and the symbols on the walls flared brightly. The Watcher's screams echoed through the house as the well began to collapse in on itself. When the villagers found Sarah the next morning, she was lying unconscious in the garden, her clothes torn and her hands bloodied. She had no memory of what had happened after she entered the basement, but the house was different. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, and the walls no longer seemed to bleed. Black Hollow Manor still stands, but it is quieter now. The scratching in the walls has stopped,